Warner Brothers has become and remained one of the largest studios in Hollywood ever since it was founded back in 1923. Being around for such a long time through some of the bigger moments in recent history means that Warner Brothers has its fair share of related scandals. This is Where Are They Now, and today we are talking about 10 of them. Coming in at number 10 is Clockwork Orange. Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of Anthony Burgess' 1962 novel, The Clockwork Orange, is one of my favorite movies. I couldn't even really tell you why, but when it first released back in 1971 and 1972, depending on location, it was during an era of what could be called film revolution. In the past, films were placed under some pretty strict rules about what they can and can't show and include. And with film schools and counterculture, those rules were kind of left in the past. The Clockwork Orange's themes revolve around morality, psychology, society as a whole, and the film portrays it all in a way that at the time was quite shocking. While Clockwork Orange was the number 3 film for 1973 in the United States, it was given an extremely rare X rating in its original release, causing Kubrick to replace around 30 seconds of explicit footage from 2 scenes in order to bring it down to an R rating re-release later in 1972. The film was criticized and blamed for violent crimes that occurred that year, causing the film to be withdrawn from British release. Also, because of the explicit nature of some scenes, the National Catholic Office for Motion Pictures rated it C for condemned, which meant Roman Catholics were actually forbidden from seeing the film. Number 9. Ezra Miller. As most people have heard from one of his many recent activities, Ezra Miller has been causing problems. Attacking people in Iceland and Hawaii, having a restraining order filed against them, manipulating and running off with Dakota Iron Eyes, trespassing on and burglarizing someone's house in Vermont, for which the actor is currently on probation for, or police trying to serve an emergency care order for a woman who was hiding out in Ezra's home. The actor has had quite a few scandalous moments all of their own. But even after all of it, it hasn't hampered the planned release of Warner Bros. The Flash film, which will star the actor in the titular role. Although the actor has revealed they're seeking treatment for, quote, complex mental health issues, the studio has been receiving backlash ever since from multiple different sources for continuing the release of The Flash with Ezra in the lead role. Actress Issa Rae told Elle that the Flash movie continuing with star Ezra Miller is a, quote, clear example of the lengths that Hollywood will go to save itself and to protect offenders. Now, to be fair here, the studio is a business that has poured millions of dollars into the production of the movie, and to not release it would be a huge loss for them. Could they have recast and reshot? Possibly, but the cost of doing so might make the whole thing pointless anyways. I don't like the situation, but it is an interesting thing to discuss, which we can do down below in the comments. Number 8. Zack Snyder. With the mammoth success of Disney's Marvel Cinematic Universe, Warner Brothers, who had the rights to DC Comics characters, wanted to cash in on the superhero craze by creating their own cinematic universe. And they failed miserably. The tail end nail in the coffin to that attempt may have come with 2017's Justice League. Zack Snyder, who was at the helm of this new universe, was beginning to cause a lack of faith from Warner Bros. That, coupled with a family tragedy for Snyder, saw him leave the Justice League project, the culmination of a few years of DC's films almost near the end of its completion. Instead, he was replaced by director Joss Whedon, who jumped ship from directing 2 Marvel's Avengers movies. Now, he's got all his own controversy of his own, but Joss almost remade the movie with rushed rewrites and reshoots that resulted in a less than stellar movie that was panned by critics, viewers, and even its own creators. Pretty quickly, fans all over the internet called for the release of, quote, the Snyder Cut, and they were pretty damn toxic about it. Eventually, thanks to Warner seeing the potential of all this demand, we got the 4-hour massive Snyder Cut on HBO Max, and unfortunately, it too fell just a little bit flat. Number 7. Joss Whedon. One of the main cast members for 2017's Justice League was Ray Fisher, who played the pretty pivotal role of Cyborg. Well, on June 29, 2020, Ray Fisher sparked another set of controversies surrounding Justice League, but aimed specifically at the replacement director brought in to finish it, Joss Whedon. Ray tweeted a 2017 clip of him complimenting the director, but in his tweet, he wrote that he would, quote, retract every bit of this statement. Then, 2 days later, also on Twitter, Ray called Whedon, quote, gross, abusive, unprofessional, and completely unacceptable while working on the film, adding on June 29th that Warner Bros. Executives John Berg and Jeff Johns had enabled the director's behavior. This resulted in Warner Media announcing that they would investigate the situation, which got flipped on its head when the studio accused Fisher of being uncooperative during the investigation, which he proved to be false. Pretty quickly, other actors began to support Fisher or even provide their own stories of Joss Whedon's unacceptable behavior, including Jason Momoa, Gal Gadot, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Charisma Carpenter, costume designer Cynthia Bergstrom, and Whedon's own ex-wife, Kai Cole. Number 6. Kevin Tsujihara. Kevin Tsujihara has been a part of Warner Bros. Since 1994 and was promoted to the head of the studio in 2013. Well, unfortunately for him, but fortunately for everyone else, Kevin was exposed during the Me Too movement for having an extramarital affair with actress Charlotte Kirk, while pushing producers into including her on their projects. According to sources, the two met through a mutual friend, Australian businessman James Packer, who met the 20-year-old struggling actress in 2012 when he was 45 and at the tail end of a failing marriage, and the two began a relationship. But weirdly, after introducing Kevin to Charlotte in September of the next year, text messages showed Packer pressuring the actress to embrace Tsujihara's, advances. More text messages proved that they did engage in a relationship and that there was an added benefit for the actress for doing so. While it was first investigated in 2017, it wasn't until 2019 that everything was exposed and Tsujihara chose to resign from his position. Number 5. Warner Brothers. Harry, Albert, Sam, and Jack Warner are the Warner Brothers. Together, these four brothers all built and ran the company, but that doesn't mean they necessarily got along all of the time. Like most siblings, the four brothers bumped heads on more than a few occasions. Now, this was largely attributed to just how different the four of them were. Jack, Harry, Albert, and Sam were each famously described as womanizing, conservative, quiet, and visionary, respectively. So yes, they were incredibly different from each other, but they still held it together for a good long while. That is, until 1927, when Sam Warner, the visionary of the four, passed away. The conservative Harry and the womanizing Jack had the worst of conflicts between the three remaining brothers, but quiet Albert still got in on the action as well. Now, I think if we were to choose the worst of the bunch though, it does seem to be womanizing Jack, big surprise, who outside of his flamboyant womanizing ways also tricked Albert and Harry into selling their shares of the company, and then he bought it all and became the head of the company. As you can guess, that brought an abrupt end to any kind of family bond, and the three brothers never spoke again. Number 4. Natalie Wood. Natalie Wood was one of her generation's greatest actors, and she started her career off at the age of 5. And as is the stereotype with young actors, she suffered a lot of unfavorable situations, being forced to navigate a world where no one truly had her individual happiness in mind. Starting with her mother, Maria Gurdon, who was the reason Natalie was in the industry. Maria has been documented tearing the wings off of a butterfly to make Natalie cry, and even forced Natalie to continue working after she suffered a broken wrist during a scene. After her years in high school is when she signed with Warner Brothers, and she was forced into relationships with much older men who were also in the industry, some of which including a director for one of her films and even Frank Sinatra. It is also claimed in an autobiography of the actor that 5 of her friends had recalled that the actress had been severely mistreated by a quote married film star who was never actually named. And then her extremely suspicious passing at 45 years old could have potentially been caused by her then husband and fellow actor Robert Wagner. It's a tragic Hollywood tale that Warner Brothers happens to have a rather large hand in. In at number 3, the Censored 11. If you have never heard of the Censored 11, allow me to explain. This list of 11 short Looney Tunes and Merry Melody cartoons, both owned by Warner Brothers, which were made between 1931 and 1944, were withheld from being released on television by United Artists, otherwise known as being withheld from syndication, because of the use of ethnic stereotypes in the cartoons, but specifically, these cartoons pretty heavily featured exaggerated African and African American caricatures and stereotypes. Now, a lot of animation from this time features stereotypes that were commonplace at the time, but would make any modern audience enraged. Dumbo, for example, had a set of crows that spoke slang, and the lead crow was called Jim Crow. Some other cartoons have been edited or also removed from circulation, like World War II era cartoons involving the Japanese, such as Bugs Bunny Nips the Nips. But these 11 were specifically held back, with only 3 of them being public domain, meaning you can go watch them right now on the internet. Those 3 are Merry Melodies, Hittin' the Trail for Hallelujah Land, Jungle Jitters, and All This and Rabbit Stew. Other more ridiculous titles from these 11 include references to other stories, so like Snow White and the 7 Dwarves became Coal Black and the 7 Dwarves, and Goldilocks and the 3 Bears became Goldilocks and the Jivin' and bears. The Censored 11 cartoons did actually run for a while until 1968, which is when they were pulled from syndication, but feel free to go and watch the public domain cartoons. I did, and it's completely astounding. Number 2. The HUAC. At the end of World War II, after Warner Bros. Had worked with the government to produce anti-fascist propaganda and content, the USA and the Soviet Union began to go head-to-head, which resulted in studios like Warner Bros. Creating content and propaganda that was now aimed at pretty much any left-wing movement. In 1938, anti-communist points of view led to the creation of the House Un-American Activities Committee, or the HUAC, inside the House of Representatives, who focused on investigating American citizens on the basis of their alleged or actual membership in, sympathy to, or association with the Communist Party. But more specifically, they focused heavily on people within the film industry. According to the LA Times, the 10,500 member Conference of Studio Unions went on strike in opposition to this. But the rival union, the 12,000 member International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, did not strike. On Friday, October 5th, 1945, a large group of striking members blocked the employee entrance to Warner Bros., which led to a conflict with non-striking members, which resulted in a riot and the injury of around 25 people, and the day was nicknamed Black Friday or Bloody Friday. When Jack Warner testified at the UHAC hearing surrounding the event, he called out around 12 of his employees, including screenwriter Howard Koch, who were all not communists, but Jack just wanted revenge against Howard for striking in the first place. And finally, in at number 1, Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. Similar to the controversy surrounding Ezra Miller, but on an arguably larger scale, almost everyone has heard about the trial of Heard versus Depp. It was streamed online for millions to see, and whether you agree with that or not, it inspired countless memes and ulterior controversies all of its own, specifically surrounding a few of Warner Bros. Films and franchises. For Amber Heard, she has appeared in Warner and DC's Aquaman, the Justice League, and she is supposed to appear in the sequel to Aquaman, all as Aquaman's love interest, Mera. This has caused an uproar from those online, and more specifically Johnny Depp fans, outraged that the actress has been allowed to continue being cast as Mera for the Aquaman sequel despite allegations of mistreatment. I think a large part of this outrage stems from the fact that Warner Bros. Has replaced Johnny Depp as the main antagonist in their Harry Potter adjacent Fantastic Beasts series pretty quickly after allegations of mistreatment were raised against him by Amber Heard, costing the actor millions of dollars. A Warner Bros. Executive testified during the trial that Amber Heard's role in Aquaman 2, as well as her ability to renegotiate her contract, were not impacted by any statements made by her ex-husband Johnny Depp or his representatives, and during that trial, Depp even stated that he used his connections with the studio to help Heard land the role of Mera in the first place. Let me know your thoughts on this one down in the comments below. But that's all the time I've got for today. You've been watching Where Are They Now, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.